of cards.
You know, people can do whatever they want.
It's kind of a interesting hipster response, right? For the longest time, we tried to avoid white bordered cards. We were hunting down the black bordered version of cards when there was a dearth of these white bordered core sets. You were cool if you had white bordered Wrath of Gods or white bordered Millstones, or excuse me, black bordered Wrath of Gods and black bordered Millstones. No longer. Now we're hunting down the white bordered cards.
And in some cases, just making our own.
Right. So Ethan doing Is It Phoenix stuff, getting those wheels turning, generating lots and lots of instants and sorceries that are heading to the graveyard. Unfortunately, drawing the Arclight Phoenix there, just missing with the Thought Scour.
Yeah, you see that type of turn from Ethan. It would have made Liliana look pretty bad, just Arclight Phoenix in general, and that's kind of how this matchup goes. So Allie being able to get rid of a thing in the ice with her Liliana is probably the best possible use.
Nice follow-up play from Allie here with the Kalitas.
Yeah, a little slow, but 4 toughness is key. I see 1 Lightning Axe in the graveyard, and no Snapcaster Mages in Ethan's deck. So not a whole lot of answers to this, actually. Presumably the Golgari deck will be able to keep Thing in the Ice off the battlefield, but yeah, Ethan does have that 1 copy of Set Adrift currently in his hand, too.
Could clean up any of the problems maybe currently facing. Ethan also with Phoenix in hand, and I believe a 4th land if he wants to just go ahead, hard cast that and take care of the Liliana right now. That's certainly an option.
Yeah, a little awkward because the Liliana could have made Ethan discard the Arclight Phoenix, but he chose to just keep it in hand because he's a little light on gas. Thought he might just cast it, but now if you cast it, attack Liliana, and Allie has a removal spell.
Kalitas is going to clean that up forever.
Yeah, and then Phoenix gone forever. Allie gets lifelink attack in, and also gets a zombie token to help pressure.
I think that was Ethan's plan initially, hard casting the Phoenix, but you see the Kalitas has made him shift gears here. Going to go ahead and flashback Faithless Looting, take a look at 2 new cards, choose a couple to head over to the bin.
Yeah, Kalitas changes things for sure. And Ethan's just like, all right, we're on a new plan now. Hard casting this Phoenix is not really going to get us there, so we need to go digging.
I like the adaptation here. Important to stay fluid in how you're going to approach the matchup. Ethan going to go ahead and play an untapped Steam Vents, take a little damage. And that's going to cast that Set Adrift that we did talk about.
It's still not great.
Not here. Not backbreaking here. Kind of just trying to hold serve and get a game plan online. But Kalitas is going to head to the top of the battlefield. Or excuse me, the top of the library via Set Adrift. And now Allison's going to redraw Kalitas. Surprise, I'm back. Let's see if she just wants to deploy right away. She does. Liliana's going to plus. Allie's hand now empty. Ethan pitches fetch land. Turns pass back. Ethan takes a draw. Draws a Pyromancer's Ascension.
So very, very powerful card. Obviously one of the stronger cards in the matchup. But it really depends on whether or not Ethan is going to be able to chain cantrips together to get counters on that Ascension.
Certainly.
And he's already kind of under the gun. That Kalitas is going to put the game away, not super quickly, but like the lifelink buffer is pretty big, and it being a thing that can help deal with the Arclight Phoenixes cleanly definitely matters a lot.
Ethan going to go ahead and cast Opt there. There was no copy of Opt already in the graveyard, so not incentivized to play Ascension first. Here's some Metamorphose. I think we drew white-bordered Serum Visions, of course.
A classic.
Yes. I'm a big fan of deck customization. I think you should make your deck your own in whatever way you enjoy it. Me personally, I love the ugly from the Vault foils, my favorite cards in all of Magic.
You might actually just be alone in that.
Well, it's great because I get great deals on them all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Here is the Pyromancer Ascension. singular Pyromancer, I should point out. I often struggle and call it Pyromancer's Ascension. It's not. It's Pyromancer Ascension.
Yeah, I've written about this card enough to finally get the actual title correct.
It's unintuitive, I'll say that. So Arclight Phoenix was brought back from the graveyard and was able to attack that Liliana, removing it from the battlefield. Allie just going to go ahead and fetch on end step. Untaps here. Some creature lands on the battlefield. That'll help the clock a bit.
Yeah, singular Treetop Village. And if Allie's able to draw a spell here, specifically like a removal spell, I would like her spot a decent amount.
So she drew an Inquisition. Going to go ahead and find Lightning Bolt, Faithless Looting. Says I would like to look at what you presently have in your graveyard. There is a Lightning Bolt there. The Faithless Looting was exiled, already flashed back.
Yeah, the tough part about all this is that Ethan kept 2 cards on top.
Allie is going to go ahead and take that Faithless Looting. Activate Treetop Village. Going to rumble in for 6 points of damage. Gain a little life from the lifelink on Kalidas. That's always nice.
You see here, though, this game, if Pyromancer's Ascension was not there, the stuff that Ethan is doing is just incredibly fair. But the Ascension is by far the big problematic card here.
Yeah, I am a buyer in this new aspect of the deck. It's kind of where I was high in the deck. I thought it was the best deck. I thought, though, there were still successful adaptations to be made. This card is where I kind of turned the corner. And I think it's like you need some reason why you're passing on Izzet Phoenix at this point. And it has to be like one of 3 decks that you consider you have mastery over. I think if you're a Tron master, an Amulet master, a Dredge master, you can make some cases for continuing to play those decks. But a lot of other decks are completely squeezed out of this format right now.
So now Ascension is active.
Double Lightning Bolt, going to clean up Kalidas.
And Ethan taking a control role here, leaving the Arclight Phoenix back against that Treetop Village.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot when you have active Pyromancer Ascension. Like, it doesn't take much to actually put the game away. And so trading 3 damage for 3 damage on this turn is likely not a wise choice.
Allie going to go ahead and deploy a Dark Confidant. Could lead to some gas. We'll see what it brings off the top of the library. But that active Pyromancer Ascension so often just closes these games in a heartbeat. If not in actuality, it does enough where you've virtually cemented the game.
Right, and here's one of the big combo pieces. You're already playing Manamorphose in the deck for combos with Arclight Phoenix and Thing in the Ice, but Manamorphose copied off Ascension allows you to basically just have this Storm-like turn where you're actually generating mana, drawing a bunch of cards, and you either end up with a bunch of Lightning Bolts or a bunch of Arclight Phoenixes in play attacking your opponent.
Either way, your opponent's losing life in 3-point chunks very quickly.
And Golgari is really good at winning the small ball games. But when your opponent does things like this, where they just spend a turn drawing 10 cards or whatever, you don't have a whole lot of comeback mechanisms for stuff like that.
Right. I want to note that in Allie's deck, there are 4 Assassin's Trophies, so she is ready to answer these Pyromancer's Ascensions. There's also Maelstrom Pulse, there's Nile Spellbomb to try and contain the graveyard. So Allie, conscientious of the problem that Ascension brings to the table, just didn't have the answer here.
Yeah, I mean, she was on the play. I think she took a mulligan and did not have a very explosive draw or anything, but I think she did a good job of containing Izzet Phoenix, if not for this Ascension.
And you see Ethan just doing Izzet Phoenix stuff right now, refilling his hand out of absolutely nowhere. Liliana had made both players resource starved, and now Ethan has all the cards on the planet sitting there ready to go.
Yeah, still mana floating too. Faithless Looting is going to make a lot of Arclight Phoenixes, if that's a thing. And there's also just a lot of Lightning Bolts.
Yeah, here we're going to use that mana. Going to go ahead, flash back that Faithless Looting. Look at a bunch more cards. Already 2 Arclight Phoenixes in hand. There's the 3rd one. It gets out of control so quickly, Jerry.
So it's 2 turns. 2 turns of having an active Ascension, and the game is just unwinnable.
It's crazy because Ascension decks were always on the fringes of Modern. Like, we knew this was a strategy that had legs, but this is also the best Ascension deck we've ever seen.
Yeah, the fact that you get to merge things like Arclight Phoenix with Pyromancer Ascension is the big part of it, because Ascension just by itself isn't necessarily strong enough, because you will run into opponents that have Abrupt Decays and Assassin's Trophies and stuff like that. But now look at this. Now you're fighting on 2 different axes. You also have Thing in the Ice as like this pseudo sweeper to handle creature decks like humans. Like, what is someone supposed to do outside of try and kill you on turn 3?
Ethan going to go ahead, clean up that Dark Confidant, throw a Lightning Bolt at Allie as well. Allie says, yeah, that's going to be enough. Thank you very much. I have seen enough of your Is It shenanigans. And we're going to head to game 2 with Allie looking for answers in the sideboard for this extremely powerful Is It Phoenix strategy. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at those sideboards now? We'll start over on Allie's side. Looks like we're looking at 3 Fulminator Mages, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Collective Brutality, 1 Nissa Vital Force, 1 Nile Spellbomb, 1 Kitchen Finks, 1 white piece of cardboard. That's the future of whiteboarding your deck. You just whiteboard the entire card.
That's a Grafdigger's Cage, by the way.
Supposed to be a Grafdigger's Cage. 1 to Glamour and 1 Damnation. Gerald, what do you like here from the Golgari deck? How does Allison prepare for that onslaught that's coming from the other side?
Love the Nile Spellbomb. I think that Surgical Extraction is good enough against specific pieces of the deck that it is worth bringing in. Kitchen Finks helps fight against Lightning Bolt, allows you to be a little bit grindier. And then there are things like Collective Brutality, Nissa Vital Force that are like kind of medium, but could slot in depending on how many dead cards you have. And then depending on how desperate you are, you could go to Engineer Explosives to try and answer Thing in the Ice and Pyromancer Ascension. But I think the Golgari deck has enough ways to answer that in the main deck.
See if Allie agrees. Meanwhile, over on Ethan's side, we're looking at Chandra, Torch of Defiance, 1 Cryptic Command, 1 Shatterstorm, 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Surgical Extraction, 2 Blood Moon, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Ravenous Trap, 1 Anger of the Gods, and finally 1 Abrade. Ethan looking pretty dominant in game 1. Does he have to make big changes in game 2, or can he play it fairly close to the vest here?
I would basically expect the games to slow down a little bit. So things like Chandra, Cryptic Command probably have a decent home here. I also like the Spell Snare, which is kind of a weird inclusion for a sideboard, but I like it because of things like Tarmogoyf and Dark Confidant.
Right.
Blood Moon is something that you could potentially try and catch your opponent with, but the Golgari deck is kind of known for playing a bunch of basic lands to power Field of Ruin and everything, so
right.
I don't think I would really lean on that. So minor changes for Ethan. I think that he'll probably get rid of like the main deck Surgical Extractions, just make some small tweaks and board in some bigger stuff.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. See Ethan sitting at 5th place on our leaderboard right now. If you're trying to make your way up the SCG Tour leaderboard, get in on all this invitational action, of course the Players' Championship, you got to hit up those IQs. $1,000 split among the top 8. Of course, you get your invitational qualifications. SCG points, incredibly valuable for everyone participating in the Player of the Year race. Also good for getting you into the Invitational, too. You can accumulate those. Another way to participate in that huge tournament coming up in June. I'm going to be there participating. Can't wait. Also get a top 8 playmat. And, of course, we give out our personality tokens. If you want to know more about Invitational qualifiers, check us out at go.starcitygames.com/IQ.
I watched Brian pick up his order from SCG today. Included in his order were some personality tokens. And
I got them signed by our own Jeremy Noel, so I need to track down Justin as well, make sure I get those signed. Get the full set absolutely going.
And then Stephen Green was like, oh, do you want me to sign yours? And you were just like, no.
No, hard pass.
Not
Thanks.
at all.
Yeah. No, don't be silly. No hate for Stephen here. Trying to collect that whole versus set as I get ready to make my debut in Commander, coming up literally any moment now. I might just start a Commander game here at the desk, Jerry. You never know.
I hope not. We're kind of busy.
Kind of doing
stuff. Yeah. Watching Allie take a lot of mulligans.
Yeah, not good. Not a good spot to be in.
No, I mean Modern's one of those formats where it is very unusual for a matchup to strictly be about card advantage. Very often it's more important to find things that are specifically necessary to have in the matchup, and Golgari kind of has that problem where, you know, sometimes the fatal pushes are good against an opponent, but pretty bad in other places. And in this matchup specifically, you probably want some amount of like graveyard hate plus a clock.
Right.
And any one piece without the other is probably not going to do it.
Well, that's kind of the thing about Izzet Phoenix at this point, right? Is it's no matter what deck it's playing against, it's asking them to have it all. You have to be prepared for so many angles that it's coming at you. The graveyard is like sort of a weak point, but still there's 7/8s in the form of Thing in the Ice, and you can just throw lightning bolts at your opponent's dome. It's crazy how many different paths to victory this deck now presents.
And they all work so well together too, which is the dumb thing. That's the dumbest part about all of it.
Right. You know, over on the Game podcast, we talked a lot about Izzet Phoenix as it came to prominence. Both of us very firmly in the camp, no bans necessary, let the metagame figure itself out. I think if we head into another set, things don't change that much, you can start having the conversation at that point. The deck is getting to those points where maybe you're making a mistake by not playing it.
Yeah, I think so too. I just think it's a tall order, basically, like you said, to come up with something that is good against every single angle that it can attack from.
So turn one, Faithless Looting, going to already deposit Arclight Phoenix into the graveyard.
Clock's ticking.
Yep, Allie just the tapped Treetop Village on turn one. Takes the turn back here. Here's Scavenging Ooze. Let's see if that can get untapped. Oh, never mind. We don't need to worry about eating the Arclight Phoenix with the Ooze. We just have the Surgical Extraction. So that's dealing with one problem, and that's important. But it's not the slam dunk you might think it is if you were just playing your first few games against Izzet Phoenix.
No, it is the deck's namesake, but absolutely at this point the deck has adapted to no longer rely on that card specifically.
As Allie fanned through the deck, I did see that the Chandra, Torch of Defiance, made it in for Ethan. How do you feel about Chandra, Torch of Defiance versus something like, say, I don't know, Keranos, Jerry?
I was going to say, don't get me started on Keranos. There is a large difference between 4 and 5 mana, is my main issue. Yes, Keranos is more likely to actually stick around and accumulate value and stuff like that, but Chandra comes down much, much earlier.
Ethan with just a fistful of lightning bolts here, 3 copies in hand.
Yeah, it's a lot of reactive cards and not a lot of velocity, and thankfully he does have a threat in Crackling Drake, so he has the tools to slow down the game and then actually present a threat himself.
Lightning bolt is going to get aimed at that Scavenging Ooze. Hits the bin. Allie's going to take a draw. Finds a third land there. Just going to play a tap land past the turn back. There you see Ethan's going to go ahead, crack that Scalding Tarn on end step, putting another white bordered Steam Vents onto the battlefield.
So one player has a foil Overgrown Tomb. The other player has a white bordered Steam Vents.
Different aesthetics for different folks.
Whose is more impressive? I think they're both probably pretty happy. You know?
Yeah, they're cool in their own way. I like Allie's basics a lot. I will say that.
There's like arena promos.
I'm not sure what they are, but I love that, like the foil star, the old school foiling.
Sure.
I think they're really cool. So just a moment ago, we said no real velocity. In the meantime, 2 cantrips have come off the top of the deck into Ethan's hand. Just as at Phoenix stuff, all of a sudden, things happen. There's a Faithless Looting in the graveyard, more velocity if needed. And there's another cantrip, Opt in hand. So, as is often the case, things change very quickly with this deck.
Yeah, missed land drop for Ethan, so he's, even more time away from deploying that Crackling Drake.
Right.
But he does have a lot to do with his mana, so at least in the meantime, he is removing Allie's threats and drawing cards and whatnot. So.
Oh, here's a threat I know you love. Tireless Tracker hits
I'm a
the
fan.
battlefield.
I'm a fan. Is it good against Lightning Bolt or not good against Lightning Bolt? Like, you do get some value, right? But I think Allie would rather prefer to have a Tarmogoyf or something in this spot.
In this spot, for sure. Yeah, with Ethan's hand as loaded as it is. Although there you see Ethan would also have the Lightning Axe for the Tarmogoyf too. So not a lot of threats that can possibly stick. This is just like a card quantity issue that Allie's running into right now. Ethan basically has answers for anything she may find, and she needs to generate some card advantage at some point. Is Tireless Tracker going to be able to do that for her?
It helps. It helps.
It's going to be tough, though. It's probably only going to get one clue with all these lightning bolts in hand.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't expect it to do anything other than just draw a card. You know, it's a 5-mana Striped Bear or whatever.
Right.
But
it's a big investment against a deck that leverages mana as well as Izzet Phoenix does. There is the lightning bolt headed for the tracker. Allie, of course, going to fetch in response. Second land enters, makes a second clue. That's a better trade.
Okay.
A little bit more happy there.
The expeditions confused me. I thought it was another overrun, too.
Okay.
So this is strong. Allie actually getting 2 cards out of this. I think the game is still reasonably close.
I would agree with that assessment. My problem is I think Allie needs multiple turns of holding it in that fashion to really start to pull ahead, whereas Ethan can kind of turn the corner like that. One sticky threat and problems get out of hand real quick. Allie debating how to use her mana on her turn. Looks like we're going to start by cracking this clue. Take a draw. We found Inquisition of Kozilek. Yep, that's going to get fired off. Take a look at what Ethan's working with. Has Opt in hand. Going to go ahead and fire that one off. Couldn't do that with Sleight of Hand, right, Jerry?
Nope. I mean, he could have cast it main phase, but...
Facts.
So I like firing off the Opt there because it's almost certainly the card that would have gotten taken.
Right.
Unless Allie was looking to protect something specific. Like if she had a Tarmogoyf, maybe you do want to take the Lightning Axe. But mostly the Opt is looking for a land.
Allie is going to go ahead and take that Serum Visage. Just plays another creature land in the form of Treetop Village. Passes the turn back to Ethan, who does pull the land off the top of the deck. Happily throws it into the bin. Going to go ahead and fetch. I think we're going to see a threat. And I think it's going to be Crackling Drake, and I think it's going to be a pretty big one.
9 or so?
Yeah, I'm counting 9. Here is that Crackling Drake. Going to go ahead and draw a card. It's Thing in the Ice, another threat off the top of the deck. And now Allie's in the mode where she needs to find some answers to these threats.
Liliana the Veil gets to clean up the Crackling Drake, and then hopefully the clue token provides something. And then if all that ends up working out, Allie's got some creature lands, which is nice.
Yeah.
The Golgari deck does get a lot of use out of its mana base. But you know that Ethan is still sitting on a pile of removal. And Izzet Phoenix, with their low land count and all the card drawing and stuff, it's not too difficult to ensure that you're basically just drawing gas for the entirety of the game.
Also helps that you just get to stash your card filtering in your graveyard, ready to deploy when you need it. A lot of strong points in favor of this as a Phoenix deck, to be sure. Looks like Ethan passed the turn back after deploying Thing in the Ice. Allie's going to go ahead and take a fetch. Find a tapped Overgrown Tomb. Allie really looking to avoid any more mana here. Needs real cards desperately.
Yeah. And Ethan, I didn't know if he was going to let that Liliana actually get another activation in. That seems kind of dangerous when you know that your opponent doesn't have a whole lot of relevant resources and all of his cards in hand are pretty good.
Allie with the Thoughtseize here. Going to go ahead and fire that off. Ethan thinking about responding with Opt. Makes sense to do so. Go ahead and take a counter off that Thing in the Ice. Take a peek at the top card. Says good enough. It's another Thing in the Ice.
Yeah, you could very easily just bottom that Thing in the Ice thinking like, oh, I have one already, but this is about whether or not he's going to be able to stick a threat.
So Allie going to go ahead and take the Lightning Axe here. That points to the fact that she may have answers for those things in the ice. Or maybe just feels like she can outbody them. Going to go ahead and deploy a Scavenging Ooze. And that's going to look to get to business real quick, get out of range of that Abrade. I don't think it was able to do so. I think instead it just had to eat Faithless Looting Beacon Bolt, right?
Right.
Yeah. So not going to be long for this world is that Scavenging Ooze, I would guess. Maybe Ethan just lets it sit on the battlefield for a bit longer. It's kind of done its thing at this point. Nope, Abrade time. And now that thing in the ice stands on the precipice of transformation and a very, very quick lock.
Yeah, 2-turn. I mean, Allie has some creature lands to potentially get in the way of it, but that's not exactly how you want to go about handling things. Ooh.
Is that Damnation?
That's a Damnation.
And a Tarmogoyf. Great follow-up from Allie, and this has changed dramatically very quickly.
This is a turnaround.
Let's see if Ethan can rebuild here. Well played by Allie to set up that turn in particular. Here's a Manamorphose. We're doing this again. Typical Izzet Phoenix stuff. Is there going to be a rebuild off the top of Ethan's deck?
I don't think so. I think Allie set this up really well where she got to Scavenging Ooze away all of the flashback and jumpstart cards. And Ethan's just sitting on lands now.
Now we're looking at a quick clock, too, in combination with those treetop villages. This is classic Golgari.
Oh, yeah.
Classic. And here come the beats.
Deal with your stuff, put you on a 2-turn clock. Let's go.
Love it. Allie's going to pass the turn back to Ethan. He's facing down a potentially lethal attack here. Here's a Manamorphose. Got to find a Thought Scour. Go ahead and cast that.
It's not really going to do anything with the Phoenix's exiled, too.
Right, right. You lose a lot of the explosiveness. And it just lands off the top, and Allie takes game 2. Well done from Allison Warfield. Beautifully played. Dealt with each threat in kind, and was able to then just close the window in a quick 2 turns.
Yeah, very impressive stuff.
Yeah.
And again, if Pyromancer Ascension were there, all that like 1-for-1ing, that nickel and diming, that small trading would have not been effective at all.
Right, right. So it's one of those things you need your answers to line up with the threats. They did in that instance, and Allison able to leverage it for a victory. Going to head back into the sideboard here. Anything you want to change as you go into game 3? Again, play draw considerations is something I always like to talk about. Are there cards in either of these decks that you really want on the play or draw specifically?
Blood Moon is the card that I would consider more on the play.
Right.
But I still don't think that I would necessarily want it. We didn't even really talk about the Damnation coming in, and pretty heads up by Allie.
Yeah, very effective there, cleaning up the battlefield.
It's like, well, maybe I can assemble this plus a Nile Spellbomb, take out all the Phoenixes. It kind of makes sense. And then in that instance, Ethan ran out the second thing in the ice because why wouldn't you?
Why not?
You know,
Yeah.
what is it not safe from? If nothing else, your thing in the ice with more counters is protecting your other thing in the ice with fewer counters from Liliana of the Veil. So it does make sense to do that.
Right. I was thinking Maelstrom Pulse going into that turn. That was kind of the card he was afraid of. But Damnation does it too, for sure.
Yeah, Pulse is a card that not a lot of people are playing at the moment. Allie does have the 1 copy in her deck that you noted, so definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it seems like it's set up well right now in the format. As we mentioned, the diversity of threats and the fact that, like you said, you can have those explosive Phoenix turns, and you can just go ahead, Maelstrom Pulse, and then deal with the graveyard in that spot. In combination with Spellbomb, it's kind of a very reasonable answer against this deck.
Do you see that?
Did he? He said draw, didn't he?
He did say draw.
Okay. This is something that's going around a lot in Modern right now, often in the context of the Death Shadow Izzet Phoenix matchup. A lot of Death Shadow pilots opting to take the draw. It's controversial, I think, to say the least. I think there's a lot of people who believe it's always a mistake, and there's a lot of people who tell you it's one of the keys to the matchup. Where do you fall, Jerry?
So the logic behind it is that Izzet Phoenix is trying to assemble 3 spells in 1 turn to bring back an Arclight Phoenix. And if you make them play first and you play a discard spell on turn 1, they may not have the resources necessary to be able to do that. However, I think you run into problems when talking about how things like Opt and Serum Visions and Faithless Looting, Manamorphose, they chain into each other. You don't need 3 cards in your hand to start a turn to bring back an Arclight Phoenix.
Right.
So I also think things are different with Pyromancer's Ascension, where if you just land that early, like your plan isn't necessarily about Arclight Phoenix. Plus, these decks board in things like Nihil Spellbomb, which we see on the battlefield, Surgical Extraction. You have other ways to get rid of your Arclight Phoenixes. So it's not all about that. And I think being on the play does have merit.
Being on the play has been so important for so much of Modern's history, and I understand there are some differing points here. This is not your typical Modern deck, but it's hard for me to believe that this deck really benefits that much from being on the draw.
If Phoenix didn't have a draw engine, I would believe it, and Ethan does only have 2 copies of Ascension in his deck. Mm-hmm. So it is certainly possible that, you know, he doesn't draw that card over the course of this game.
Ali is going to go ahead and take advantage of being on the play, deploying a threat immediately. It's Tarmogoyf. That Tarmogoyf also outsizing Lightning Bolt due to Serum Visions already being in the graveyard. Of course, upon resolution, it would become a 3/4 and survive. So taking out one of the key pieces of removal that Ethan might have.
Yeah, not a whole lot of ways to kill this. I mean, he can deploy a Thing in the Ice potentially to block for a little bit, but that's not going to last long. And if Ali has a follow-up removal spell for it, then things are looking pretty bad, but we'll see.
There's that Thing in the Ice. Ali going to go ahead and take a draw here. Tapping 1 black mana for a Fatal Push. There goes Thing in the Ice. Tarmogoyf getting a little bigger. There's the swing from Allison. Going to drop Ethan down to 15. Passes the turn back. Ethan takes the draw. Manamorphose, Opt. Looks like an Arclight Phoenix in hand.
This is the exact situation that Golgari wants to get into. You have the clock and the disruption. You were able to remove a little bit of the counterplay from Ethan, kill the Thing in the Ice that would have put a clock on Ali and also bounce the Tarmogoyf for a little bit. And the Nihil Spellbomb hasn't even had to be used yet. So it's just chilling.
One of the great things about Nihil Spellbomb, able to just sit there until it's at its absolute peak impact, or cash in and immediately draw a card if that's what you need. A lot of versatility in that particular piece of Graveyard Hate.
Likely one of the best cards in Modern right now.
Whew, that's high praise for an artifact that's not seen a lot of play, quite frankly. Really, only Golgari leveraging it to any success.
Fairies.
Okay, I guess so. Where was the last time we saw fairies on camera, Gerald?
On camera? I don't know. Whenever Yuta Takahashi plays.
That's it. Just Yuta. So we did see the Manamorphose followed up by an Opt. Thought Scour already in hand. Cryptic Command.
There it is. Answered all of life's problems.
I wish that were true, Jerry. I'm a huge Cryptic Command fan. I would do anything to happily cast that card in Modern repeatedly. It's not great presently. Interesting one of, though, in Ethan's deck.
I think it's fine. I was actually watching a Grixis Death Shadow player round 1 and was thinking about how I think a one of Cryptic Command in that deck would be completely reasonable.
It's interesting.
Just like these games go along, and yeah, you only have 18 lands, but you're going to get to 4 mana. You're already playing things like Crackling Drake, you know?
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I like it as like a little niche curveball thing. I want to live in a world, though, where you can just put 4 Cryptic Command in your deck and do nothing but Cryptic Command over and over.
Well, have you heard of this deck called Fairies?
If only I was Yuta, I could play it successfully. But literal nobody else on the planet has had success with the deck.
Cedric tried. He failed miserably, but he tried.
As long as he tried. So Allison continues on the beatdown plan. Tarmogoyf bashing in. Ethan with a full grip at this point. Does have Beacon Bolt in hand. Fine answer to that Tarmogoyf. Unless Nope, here we go. We're going to use the Beacon Bolt. That is going to deal with Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, we could Nihil Spellbomb.
No, it's cards in exile, too.
Oh, yeah.
I had a moment.
Oh, man.
We were just talking about this on the podcast, too, about how these cards, Crackling Drake, Beacon Bolt, for a long time, it took us a lot of effort to wrap our heads around the fact they also counted cards in exile.
Okay, so that was my moment. Crackling Drake, I understood and I knew.
Now you know Beacon Bolt?
Now I know with Beacon Bolt.
Right. Unintuitive, for sure. Here's Liliana going to go ahead and plus. Is that a boon to Ethan? Maybe able to leverage that Arclight Phoenix hitting the bin? Let's see.
Yeah, Izzet Phoenix doesn't actually have a lot of discard outlets for Arclight Phoenix. You have the Faithless Lootings, a couple Lightning Axes.
Right.
I guess the Beacon Bolt that's living there right now, but that's about it. So
they benefit from the fact, though, that they see a huge percentage of the deck. So those few discount outlets they do have, they find them repeatedly.
Exactly.
And Faithless Looting, as we said, sits in the graveyard, ready to be used at any moment.
But this is another one of those situations. I mean, you have a Nihil Spellbomb on the other side of the table. You have a Liliana of the Veil that you kind of want to get rid of. You might just want to hardcast this thing.
Yeah. I think that's an underappreciated line by some Izzet Phoenix players. There is a lot of value to be had from hardcasting them at the correct moment. Here you see Ethan going to do a little bit of damage to himself. Deploy a Shockland. Time for a Lightning Bolt on Liliana. It's going to bring it down to just one. Looks like we are going to see a cleanup here from Arclight Phoenix. Rumbles in. There goes Liliana. Allie going to untap, take a draw. Still Nihil Spellbomb at the ready. Great patience from Allison, looking for the right spot to deploy that powerful graveyard exiling effect.
Yeah, you see Liliana not really doing a whole lot in this matchup. Like, if the Lightning Bolts had more targets, then I could see Liliana maybe having more of an impact. But the fact that Ethan just gets to sit on Lightning Bolt for forever if Allie's not presenting like an early Dark Confidant or a Scavenging Ooze.
Right. Ethan going to go ahead, take a draw, finds an island. Threat now on the battlefield.
It's a small threat, but a threat nonetheless.
This is kind of where we saw that last game at, too, where things had kind of reached parity. Allie really needed to find some good cards off the top of the deck. And in that instance, she slammed the door closed authoritatively. We'll see if she's able to do so here. Going to go ahead and fire off Field of Ruin. That's going to find a basic land for both players.
Yeah, the tough part about this situation is that Ethan has the clock already, and he has a Cryptic Command waiting.
Very true.
And when you're talking about dealing in exchanges that are, for the most part, 1-for-1, having a Cryptic Command can just be backbreaking. Just like having that clean 2-for-1.
Absolutely. Just another tapped land from Allie. It is a Hissing Quagmire, potential clock in the future. Going to go ahead and activate a Hissing Quagmire already on the battlefield. Opt-in response. Hand of Cryptic Command thing in the ice right now, it looks like.
I like this attack a decent amount. Allie's got multiple Hissing Quagmires, not a whole lot to do with her mana. And Ethan took some early damage from that Tarmogoyf, some fetch into shock action, and he's actually pretty low. Total,
for sure. So it looks like we found Faithless Looting off that opt.
It's like the inverse of Cryptic Command. When you're talking about trying to trade 1-for-1 resources,
right?
Faithless Looting puts you down a resource, does let you cycle through all of your excess lands and cards that don't necessarily do anything, but not exactly the card that Ethan wanted to find here.
Well, the best Faithless Looting decks make it feel like it's not card disadvantage, and certainly Izzet Phoenix checks that box wholeheartedly.
For the most part, but I mean, when you've hardcast an Arclight Phoenix and your opponent has a Nihil Spellbomb on the other side of the table, it's really difficult to actually get a whole lot of use out of it.
Fair. Card maybe at its worst in this instance, but super broken card at its worst, still pretty okay. You'll tolerate it. like you said, a way to clean out extra lands drawn in the late game, perhaps. Here comes Thing in the Ice, looking to really step up this clock. He's going to go ahead and pass the turn back to Allison. Going to untap, take a draw. Can't quite make out what is in Allie's hand. I would absolutely love to know here. I think they're spells, and I think she's waiting for the right moment to deploy them.
Okay.
Here comes Abrupt Decay, or excuse me, Assassin's Trophy. New Abrupt Decay.
Yeah.
Abrupt Decay basically completely obsolete at this point. Do not see them very often in these Golgari lists.
So that gets the last basic land out of Ethan's deck.
Here comes that Hissing Quagmire again. On the beatdown plan, but a Braid at the ready. Ethan cleans up that Hissing Quagmire. Going to go ahead and take the turn back. Another Faithless Looting off the top. 130 Legacy Challenge players. A lot of velocity, but tough to leverage in this.
Yeah,
instance.
I mean, it's tough when you don't have a lot of value discards. So maybe you just fire it off and like you use the second copy of Faithless Looting as the card that you'll discard for quote-unquote value.
Seems reasonable.
And then you basically just keep your best card out of the top two.
That also might draw Spellbomb activation out of Allie as well, which might be something that Ethan is interested in leveraging right now.
Maybe, I don't know. I think it's scary if Allie comes up with two spells, you know, Spellbomb, draw plus draw for a turn.
Yeah. So there you see, Faithless Looting is going to be pitched, as well as worthless fetch land. Well, not quite worthless. Could always get a shock land, but painful fetch land. Here comes Arclight Phoenix, dropping Allie down to 10. And Allie is going to go ahead and crack that Spellbomb. 2 fresh cards going into this turn. This is a big turn for Allison. Really needs to get onto the battlefield here. Finds Inquisition of Kozilek. That's not going to be able to take that Cryptic Command out of hand. The wrong discard spell in this instance.
I can't imagine that anyone would put Izzet Phoenix on having Cryptic Command.
No, that's a very difficult read. Ethan thinking about if he wants to Manamorphose here. That would, of course, if Allie moves to just post-combat main phase, leave him without mana for Cryptic Command.
Yeah, it's a little awkward.
I think this is dangerous. Take a draw. It is Arclight Phoenix. It's going to be a miss on that Inquisition, but move to post-combat main phase and shield her down here. Is there something Allison can do to take advantage? Let's see. She knows the pressure's on now, too. And she has declared combat.
Now is Ethan just going to panic and try and cycle the Cryptic Command to bounce the Hissing Quagmire?
I don't know about that, but I think the answer is yes. Wow.
Also overpaying by 1. Oh, red floating. Okay. Sure.
Draws Manamorphose off the top. Allie going to get to redeploy that Hissing Quagmire if she chooses. Interesting line from Ethan. Here comes Tireless Tracker. That's going to go ahead and put a clue onto the battlefield. Ethan's going to untap with Arclight Phoenix at the ready, can play a second one, and basically make this 2-turn clock. Or we can go the cantrip route. We got to start there. It's going to be Serum Visions to lead the turn, I think. Maybe Manamorphose. Let's see.
I like Serum Visions because then if you find something in the top 2 that you like, you can Manamorphose into it.
Right, and I think we found Opt.
So another way to actually get that done.
Yeah, that means we're going to get essentially a free Phoenix here. It's a guarantee now. If that's what Ethan wants.
Yeah, these are the turns that Izzet Phoenix puts together where it's like, how do you ever just shut this deck out, you know?
Yeah. So I think Ethan bottomed both there, which seems fine. I mean, hard casting the Phoenix at this stage in the game isn't really all that different from getting one out of the graveyard.
Magic players in the modern open. At this time, due to some technology issues, we are anticipating approximately 20 minutes.
So you see Izzet Phoenix doing Izzet Phoenix stuff one more time. All these cantrips. Faithless Looting at the ready to pitch that Arclight Phoenix if that's the way Ethan wants to go.
I think that is the way to go. I think you dig. You dig right now, try and find maybe a third Phoenix. And then Faithless Looting should basically be the last card that you cast in case you do draw any extra copies of Arclight Phoenix.
Oh, big threat off the top for Ethan. It's Crackling Drake.
So a bunch of cantrips happened. Ethan was trying to set things up, drew a Crackling Drake. That changed everything, which is understandable. And now Ethan's got a choice where Tireless Tracker plus Clue plus Hissing Quagmire threatens lethal. So if Allie's able to do something like play land, play Fatal Push on Crackling Drake, that'd be game over. So
Ethan recognized that, held back the Arclight Phoenix.
Yep, shifting gears a little bit.
Makes sense where I think just one swing from that Crackling Drake will be lethal at this stage. Terms of engagement have changed. What did Allie find for her turn?
Oh, if it's nothing, I think you start by cracking the Clue and seeing what happens. So
Right.
Ooh.
Here comes Tireless Tracker. Interesting little attack here.
This means something's up. I don't know what it is.
If nothing else, it gives Ethan a chance to like make a weird mistake, right? Could do something strange here. I mean, she could have like Collective Brutality in hand, which makes a no block super risky. I think the most likely result is Izzet Phoenix just hops in front. Or excuse me, Arclight Phoenix hops in front of this Tireless Tracker. No. No block.
Oh, this could be a damnation too.
No. Looks like just Assassin's Trophy. Going to go ahead and clean up that Crackling Drake. And we are going to crack Clue. I would assume we're still in combat right now. Taking that draw.
I don't think so. I think the damage was taken.
Yeah, you're right. We see life totals change. Ethan down to 3. Interesting. Interesting turn. A lot to consider on both players' sides.
Also only 2 minutes left, but I think this game in, the next 7 turns is going to be over one way or the other.
I agree. Here's a Fatal Push for that Arclight Phoenix. And just going to go ahead and pass the turn back to Ethan. Ethan with a land off the top, but Izzet Phoenix never out of gas. It's a Faithless Looting, ready to go. It's going to draw 2 cards. Number 1, Lightning Axe. Number 2, Serum Visions. Pretty decent.
This deck. This stupid deck.
It just does stuff. It really does. There goes another Izzet Phoenix to the bin. Excuse me, Arclight Phoenix. That's going to be tough to get over as this deck becomes more and more dominant. Here goes that Serum Visions, leaving a Lightning Bolt on top.
That's spell number 2. So Ethan has the option of using Lightning Axe or another Faithless Looting here to bring back those Phoenixes. I think I like the Axe, considering how scary that tracker is.
Right. With an additional red mana, you could make a case that you just want to go ahead and Lightning Bolt it, but probably has to be Axe here. Boom. Axe to the face for this Tireless Tracker. Hits the bin.
Worth noting that if that Clue got cracked in combat, Ethan was at 2, and then that Quagmire would be lethal.
Right.
And Ethan would be forced to keep one of these Phoenixes back. Could potentially change things.
I think you're right. I think that was an interesting decision. Here come the Arclight Phoenixes. Allie going to fall to 4 here. Takes a draw off the top. What did we find? Just going to extend the hand, and the Is It Phoenix deck pulls it out again, doing Is It Phoenix things. That's just what